أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the third episode of the Sayyid series, in which we will be discussing primarily Surah Al-Hujurat, verse number 13. That's Surah 49, verse 13. Before we go into this verse, let's have a brief recap of the previous two episodes. We spoke about the general usage and the specific usages of the words Sayyid al-Sharif and al-Sharif, along with their various histories and their applications. The verse I quoted in the beginning of this video, as I mentioned earlier, begins by saying, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuhan nasu, O people, Inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, we created you from male and female. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا, and we created you in nations and tribes so that you may know one another. إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ, the best amongst you in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those who are the most pious. إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلِيمٌ خَبِيرٌ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all-knowing and all-aware. Let's go into this verse in the Arabic, because there's some important indications in this verse. The first part of the verse, as we mentioned, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we created you in male and female, and then it says وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا, and we placed you in tribes, in nations and tribes, so that you may know each other. The part or the aspect of this verse is where it says جَعَلْنَاكُمْ, refers to a concept called al-Ja'al al-Ilahi, which means a specific divine placement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where this will or this divine placement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is different from other wills. There's nothing in this world, in this universe, in all of creation that happens without the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there's certain places where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to emphasize an action of His, and for this He uses the term ja'ala or ja'al. We say ja'al al-ilahi, or the divine placements, the placements of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And examples of this in Surah Al-Baqarah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Nabi Ibrahim, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested him with certain words, he passed them, and he said to him, Inni ja'iluka linnasi imama, I have placed you as an imam amongst the people. So it's speaking about a specific placement, a specific appointment. The other example is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about Nabi Adam alayhi salam, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, I am placing a khalifa on the earth. So it's a specific and divine placement which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to highlight. In this verse, we find exactly the same words being used, where He says, وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلًا, we made you into nations and tribes, which shows that this designation, this appointment into nations and tribes is specific for a specific purpose. And what is that purpose? Which is the next part of the verse, لِتَعَارَفُوا, which is very important here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not saying, I created you into nations and tribes and get to know each other. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I placed you into nations and tribes so that you can get to know each other, which indicates the importance of getting to know one's own genealogy and the genealogy of others, as the genealogy of a person, the history of a person, shapes his customs and shapes the traditions that he follows in his life. This is very important in another aspect, because the next part, it says, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum, the best of you, O people, O nations, O tribes, are those who are the most God-fearing, God-aware, God-conscious. Someone may come forward to us and pose this objection. What is the purpose behind you making these videos? Why are you making this series? What are you intending by it? Are you intending to belittle others? People who are not Sadat, people who are not from the Ashraf, are you intending to belittle them? And if we're all equal in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then why are you highlighting your relationship with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi if you're not intending to prove your supremacy over us? The answer to this is very simple. The same verse which is used as a common objection to topics like this, the same part of this verse, which is Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum, that the best of you in the eyes of Allah is the most pious of you. I ask you, the one who's watching this video at the moment, who is the most pious of all humanity and the jinnat and any creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I think we will all agree it's Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, without a doubt. The honoring of the Sayyids and the Ashraf is not for their own sake. It is because of their nisbah and their connection with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. This can be divided into, the explanation of this can be divided into many approaches or dimensions. Two of them I'm going to be focusing on. One is the rational side and one is the textual side, where the rational side, the logical side, and then you have the other side, which is the Quranic ayat and the ahadith. I will be covering next week the sayings of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi and his progeny regarding this topic and regarding honoring the Sadat because of the nisbah to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. But in this one we'll speak about the rational proofs so that I can prime you and get you ready for the next episode. When anybody visits the shrine of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, you enter, you go towards the shrine of Abu Abdullah alayhi salam and you approach the darih. When you go to the darih, you kiss the darih. What if someone said to you, that darih, the metal which makes up the darih, is just like any other metal. It was made in the same way. The same people who crafted that metal, made this metal. What is it about this metal that makes you kiss it? The answer is very simple. It's the connection to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, which makes that metal different from other metals. Another good example is the graves of parents, for example. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant all of our parents the longest of lives. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. However, those whose parents have passed away know that the graves of their parents, the soil on their graves, the same graves that we put rose petals on and flowers on, that soil is like any other soil. However, the connection of that soil with your parents makes it a special soil for you. So you'll often find people caressing the soil. You'll often find people putting candles on the soil, or you'll find people doing their various customs that they do in order to respect that soil. But the nisbah is what makes it special in the eyes of people. And may our parents be a sacrifice for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Another good example is the Kaaba. The Kaaba is the first house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not the first Qibla, of course, that would be the Qibla in Palestine. However, the first house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in Mecca. And this house, when you see people going to Hajj or Umrah, you'll see them trying to grab the ghilaf of the Kaaba. The ghilaf is the black cloth over the Kaaba. They try to grab the Kaaba. People will try to get close to it. Why? Isn't the cloth made like any other cloth? Aren't the bricks that make the Kaaba the same as other bricks? You say no. What you're saying does not make sense, because the Kaaba is linked to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Its components are linked with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It has a nisbah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, to say that these things which have a nisbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though they're made with common materials, to say that they have no specialty or no value in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they should have no status in the eyes of people because of these common materials, that would be an ignorant claim to make. Likewise, the Sayyids or the Sadat, the Ashraf, themselves may not necessarily, on their own merits, may not be deserving of respect. However, because of their connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, They are to be respected according to rational proofs and according to the Nas of the Holy Quran, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi, and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Someone may say, you're humans like us. We were born the same way. We all error, we all sin. Yes, I agree. But the nisbah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam is what I want to highlight. Inshallah, as I mentioned, we will speak about the Nas and the sayings of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi and his Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam in the next episode, where I hope you'll join us. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and share. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.